Okay, this is the next video in the sequence of 4, I think. We're going to talk about actually raising the camper here. Once again, I've got the same instructions that you're going to have, so if you can follow along here on paper as I'm doing it, that'll probably help you, just to kind of give you a visual of how it all works. All right, raising the camper. First, we're going to remove all 4 of these clips. Make sure it just kind of falls off that hook there. There's 4 of them. They're not locked down or anything. All right, all 4 clips are off. We're going to take out this brass colored crank from this miscellaneous cabinet. Remember, you have the thin silver one for the stabilizers. This one is for the actual winch that raises and lowers the camper. Just a quick note, this is not an electric winch. Things that are electric are problematic and they break, and if for some reason you run out of power, then you're in big trouble when it comes time to lower it down. Very complicated. With this manual winch, you can always raise and lower it as long as you have arms to do it. So that's why I like this style a little bit better. So the clips are off, we're good to go, everything is securely in place. I'm going to go ahead and start cranking it. You notice this wire down here, this cable. Obviously we're going to make sure we're going the right way. Looks like we are. You can hear it. We're going to go fairly slowly just to avoid, jerking anything out of place. It doesn't need to be. Also, you may hear this go thump, thump once or twice while we're cranking it. It's just the cable shifting. It's not about to break. Doesn't hurt to stop every now and then and just make sure everything is moving as it should. Looks good. Keep going. This green cable here, this is more or less going to tell us when we've gotten to the height that we need to get to. You don't want to put too much tension on this. It's just kind of like the stabilizers. You want it to be firm, want it to be nice and firm when we get to that point, but not actually stretching it out too much. So here we go. You might hear a couple little shifts like that, perfectly fine. We'll check the wire there, looks good. Close. Okay, that's pretty good. See, it's got a little give, but it's nice and firm. So we'll call it quits there. By the way, there's no type of lock on this winch here, and there's nothing to change it. It's not like the boat we used to have where you got to flip a switch to go out and come back in. It just cranks both directions freely, and there's no lock. No, don't ask me how it works. But apparently that's how it's supposed to be. So we've got it all raised up. We want to take out the 2 brass colored braces, which will be under the table, which is once again a common storage location. There's one. Here's the other. One end of these is kind of slanted or kind of wedged, okay? There's 2 of these, and they're only for 2 of the corners, and they need to be diagonal. So it's either this one and the far one, or this one and that one. Seems to me like most of the time I'll do this one and the far corner. Again, we want to go diagonal, not on the same side. So this is, you just kind of wedge this up. It just kind of slides right in there. And down here, there's these little indentions, and that more or less kind of locks it into place. So careful not to pinch your fingers. And it just kind of slides in. This is just in case for some reason the winch were to fail, it wouldn't just come crashing down. So I'm gonna put the other one on this. Same thing, just kind of gently wedge it up there and then carefully snap it into place. So those are the braces. So now we know it's not gonna come crashing down because of these guys, and they're nice and secured on there. We want to go ahead and pull the 2 bed platforms out. And this is why we pulled the vehicle farther up than just 6 inches to get it clear of that. It's because when these come out, they come out quite a ways. We want to have some space to work with. So we'll kind of gently just slide it out. Okay. And you'll know when it is in place. You just kind of gently pull it out. It will, you'll get to a point where you really can't, it won't go side to side at all. You know you've got it out properly on both sides. We'll do the back one too. Same thing. And if it's windy, this can make it a little bit challenging, but don't worry about it, it's not going anywhere. Slide this one out. You hear that little nice stopping point there? That means we got it in place. While I'm thinking about it, doesn't hurt to mention that putting things like bags and firewood underneath here is actually kind of handy, because if you get a little shower or a little rain while you're out, it's not going to get wet. It's going to stay pretty dry under here. So we typically keep things like firewood, maybe suitcases, a crate or two, something like that, or just whatever we don't need, because space is a premium when you're camping in any kind of camper or an RV. So good storage space under there. Okay, we've got the black straps pulled out the front and rear bed platforms. Let's go back to our favorite storage spot under the kitchen table here, and you'll see four black bars. They are all the same length, so it doesn't matter which ones you use on the front or the back. Let's do the front first. Okay. Well, technically the directions say do the rear first, but it doesn't matter which one you do first. Now, if you look down here on the actual hitch, there's a little circle on either side. You're gonna put the circular end into that circle right there, and under here, there's a little silver slot. Hopefully one of these cameras can give you a view of that. It's this little slot right there. I'm gonna put this into the circle first, and you're like, oh wait, it's not fitting very well. Well, the best way to do it is put your shoulder onto it and just lift it a little bit. You know what? I don't think I pulled it out all the way, because it's not, maybe it slid backwards. There we go. A little extra, a couple inches there, make a big difference. I'm gonna use my shoulder, kind of lift it up, it slides right in, kind of rests there securely. Same thing on the other side. Put the rod in the hole, use your shoulder a little bit, and lift it, it'll slide right in. So now this bed, very secure. Very important step, putting those rods in, because if someone gets on the bed before those are in, it'll come crashing down. On that note, let me just say, keep the kids out of the camper until it's totally set up. They're gonna get inside and jump on the beds, and until these are really secured, you're at serious risk of causing some damage. So just keep the kids, let them play around the campground or in your car, on their iPads or whatever. Same thing in the back. We'll take these two bars. In this case, the holes are right here and on the side of the bumper. There's not a V shape in the back. So you put this right here, put a little shoulder into it, lift it up, and it's in the slot. Same thing here, lift it up, in the slot. And these aren't going anywhere. Nice and secure. All right, so we got the 4 black bars in place. Let's talk about the tent material. We want to pull the tent material over the edges on the side of there. This is important because this keeps the rain out. You want to make sure the edge is pulled down to where it's supposed to be, kind of folded over the corner. You shouldn't have to pull terribly hard, but it is snug. I want to make sure this flap comes out. Okay, that looks very nice. There is a thin bungee cord. Once you get all these flaps laid out here, you will notice a thin bungee cord on one side of both the front and the rear. I think it may be hung up a little bit. So it's secure on this side, and this has a nice little hook on it. This is going to go underneath to the other side. Technically, that's not actually very good. We need to get this above the bars. I'm going to put this right in the hole. And that's going to start pulling it up. While I'm under here, you can notice there's actually a Velcro strip here. So that is for this dangling flap here. It's going to just go all the way up to the edge and kind of secure it there. And make sure there's actually a snap here as well. Even if it doesn't snap, it's not going to kill you because the Velcro is really secure. Is my GoPro falling off? Are we okay? All right.
What do you need?
I've got this. Okay. Again, the purpose of this is to just make sure that anytime rain comes down, it's not going to hit that wood underneath. It's going to fall off here. It's just nice and secure there, nice and watertight. Again, this looks nice. We've got these over the corners very well. Let's go to the same thing on the front. We will pull these snugly. Again, don't rip it. There's no reason to pull hard enough to rip it. There's plenty of slack there. Just have to kind of massage it a little bit. Same thing over here. It's nicely all the way down. We want to make sure we get these flaps out on both sides. Looks like in this case, the bungee cord is going to be over here again. Okay, got this. Same thing. Velcros along all the way to the strip. There's a snap there if you want to do that. Very good. Okay, so now we've got the water. Oh, I forgot this side. Secure this pretty well. Okay, after we got those corner flaps and the under flaps in place, I'll pause for a second, let the blood get back into my head. All right, I think we're ready to go inside now. Let's go ahead and move to the door. This is a good time to pull out this little black step. You just lift it up, pops right out and slides into place. It makes it handy to get up and down. We'll go ahead and this will help you out if you need that as well, especially the kids. So we'll step inside the camper now and we'll take a look at all the setup inside. So now we're inside, and if it's sunny day, if it's getting kind of stuffy in here, feel free to unzip some of the windows to kind of air it out. That's fine. That's not going to mess you up as far as any steps go. All right, so I'm going to go back to the instruction sheet. We're inside the camper. First thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the stove from the sink section, and that's what I mean right here. This is the stove. This is the travel position, is resting in here. There's a bar underneath there to support it, so that's why it makes it safe. Let's just put this right here for the time being. If you'll notice as you put it down here, there's a couple of black straps. You can just snap those in place. There's another option for the stove, and we'll get to that later, but for now, this is the best place for it. Stove is in place. Let's go ahead and fold the sink into place. So this is the sink right here. Again, it's resting right now. You want to just lift it up, and there's a bar right here on this side that won't let you go all the way up if you don't remove it. So you just push this little button, trying to pinch your fingers, and move it to one side or the other. Now we can carefully put the sink in place. Just gently let it rest right there. By the way, before I do this, let me show you one thing. This button is a safety thing for the heater, okay? The heater won't kick on unless the sink is in place pushing this down. If you think about it this way, if the heater were to accidentally kick on while this was in place, the hot air would blow right onto this and probably cause a fire, and we won't talk about that. But that's what that is, in case you see it. So we'll rest the stove into place. Make sure the drain hose is flat. That's the white one there. And this camper's set up really nicely to where everything's pretty well buckled in place, strapped in place. Some campers, you actually have to manually push the sink hose down. If you don't do that and you turn on the water won't actually drain out. It'll just sit there and eventually back up into the sink. You don't want that. But in this case, it won't be a problem. Just make sure when you're doing it that the hose is in place. All right, let's talk about putting the beds into place now. You can move these curtains aside to give you a little more space to work with. The curtains are spread out now because when you fold it down, when you collapse the camper, it's nice to not have anything bunched up because that'll make it harder to go down. That's why they're all spread out now, all the drapes are. But since we're inside, we're setting it up, we can move these to the side. There's two bars here. One is right here. This is the same for the front and the back. And under each mattress, you'll find this kind of L-shaped bar. It's got a circular end over here and a curved end over here. You want to fit this end right onto the middle. There's a little black piece there, and it's a perfect circle right there. So you get that in, and you just kind of push it in place and see how it pops into place really nicely. Hey, it's all of a sudden becoming a camper. This is going to hook on to these little clips up here. I like to say it's good to kind of have little crab pincher hands. I hold one here and one on the back, and you got to push a little bit, but if you use these kind of sort of the pincher method, you just kind of barely push it far enough to get on that first one, and that's in place. It's really secure, not going anywhere. Same thing on the front side. Mattress is going to be in the same place. I mean, the bar is going to be in the same place. Pull it out carefully, not to, it's a big bar, so just kind of be careful. Don't scratch the ceiling or anything. We're going to find that same circle on this bar. Push it in place. Looking good. I'm just going to use a little crab pincher method. And go just far enough to get that one in place. All right, after we got the beds in place, you'll notice there's one of these zippers in each corner, okay? This is the time where you want to lower all four. This really kind of tightens up the tent material so it's not going to blow around. We're going to lower each of the zippers, low as you can, through each corner. Sometimes zippers are zippers. Just play with it a little bit, but they will all go down, I promise. This one's going down. Very good. And that's half. You're going to do all four corners, which I didn't do all four, but just in the interest of time. You want to come outside, and there's a flap that will wrap around each of the braces. Okay? If it covers up this green cable, it's okay. But we just want to put these in place, Velcro it down as best we can from top to bottom. Just kind of press on it. This kind of protects the braces from any water and just kind of seals it up. We'll do the same thing, all four sides. gently so we don't rip the material. Okay, it's all about waterproofing. You don't want to get water exposed to anything because it will mold, and that's a bad, bad thing. So all four corners want to wrap around with those the flaps that go over them. So in other words, if you see the brass-colored braces, you know you skipped the step. You didn't do it right. Let's go back in. Let's talk about the door. So the door, not my favorite part of the design of the camper. It's just not. It's kind of problematic, and we've done a few things to kind of hopefully keep from having to replace it again because it did break last year. So it's a brand new door. Please take care of it. Please follow these instructions carefully. First thing you do to get the door in place is actually close the lower section. Okay, lower section is closed. The way this is secured up here is with two clips. There's one on this side that kind of goes this way. There's one over here that goes that way. And it should keep it from falling down while it's in the traveling position. But remember, when you're traveling, the mattresses are underneath it. So if it falls down, it's not the end of the world, other than putting a lot of stress on this now. So hopefully by the time you, when you raise the camper, it's still just like this. So I'm gonna gently move this one first. Just gonna slide it up so it can kind of go down a little bit, and I'm going to slide it off of that one. It's not terribly heavy. The tricky part is this thing is going to fold down. So just kind of be careful. Doesn't hurt to have two people doing it, just one kind of holding it up, the other person kind of maneuvering it. So we're going to lower it, just kind of letting it fall there. Carefully lower it. And looks like this wasn't exactly in place, which is why the door was kind of flapping a little bit. Make sure you're not going to crush these little tabs down there, because it will go eventually flush up against those. Okay, but the way to do this, you see these little black posts on either side, like that one right there sticks out real good. These are going to fit into the slots at the bottom of the door there, okay? And sometimes this tent material gets in the way. We'll do the best we can to kind of fold it. All right, so we've taken the yellow bungee cord off now, so it has a little bit more room to give. Just be careful because it will kind of separate. We're going to lift it up a little bit to get to kind of a good angle on it. We're going to aim it right for those little slots at the bottom with these black posts. We're just going to kind of go gently down carefully to kind of make sure it sort of slowly goes into place there. Not quite getting the again, door, not my favorite part of this. But we're getting there. All right, so it's going down slowly. Put a little pressure on it. The key here is once you get it down in place, black posts are doing good. We're gonna clip this, and we're gonna clip these up here. Okay, so now this is not gonna pop up. You really do this either way, it's not gonna matter much. We're gonna undo this, and so now we should be able to open the door and close it. We did a pretty good job. As long as you hit those black posts in that slot or very, very close to it, you're going to be fine. But again, the true test is when this snaps together, you open it and it closes. The other thing I gotta do for the door is you'll notice on the frame of the door, we have some more Velcro. Campers love Velcro. So we're going to put this in place on the inside, all the way down. Try to get as close as you can on the inside to the frame. As long as it's connected at some point, you're pretty good. This is obviously not a perfect burglar-proof system, so be careful what you leave in here while it's unattended. But this is definitely going to help the insulation a lot by having this. We're going to do the same thing. You don't need to see it necessarily, but if you can just look on the edge right here, same thing on the outside. It's right outside the door frame. More Velcro goes right into place, and I'll do the outside of the other side as well. Careful not to tear it or pinch it too much. Looks pretty good. So there's our door. Nice. So that's pretty much the basic interior of the camper. You can stop right now and you're pretty much ready to go as far as just basic camping. We're going to talk about a few of the appliances right now, beginning with the fridge. We're going to step outside to that panel on the side. All right, so we're outside. Let me just say this about the fridge. If you're going to a campsite that has power, feel free to use the fridge, okay? It's yours to use. It will work other ways, either off the battery or propane. It's one of these three-way fridges, but I don't recommend running it off the battery or propane because you're going to burn through the battery and you're going to burn through the propane really quickly. Propane is pretty important for cooking as well as the heater in case it gets cold at night. You don't want to do without propane, so I really don't recommend running the fridge off of propane. Again, it will run off the battery as well, but I don't recommend doing that because if you burn through the battery, you can't use the sink because the water pump that runs the sink runs off the battery. So this is just what I recommend. If you're going to a campsite with electricity, you can pull this cord out. There's a ton of slack and plug this into the receptacle and then use the fridge. I'm not going to pull all the way out now, but you get the idea. It just kind of comes out, and when you're done, you just put it back in there. As far as turning the fridge on, you're going to come over here. There's these little clips, which I hate. This is the locked position. If you want to take it off, just get a key or something. That is the unlocked position. The left one is a little easier. The right is a little stiffer. Use like the side of a key or something. Maybe even a knife, just be careful. Again, now it's locked. Now you'll notice there's a bungee cord, a little purple bungee cord. And the reason for that is it did fall off one time last year. And the guy had used the fridge and he didn't put it back on securely and it fell off, and I think we split the difference. It was like 30 bucks. I don't want to have to take it out of your deposit. So when you put this back on, make sure these bungee clips are still connected to these zip ties. This is just sort of a backup in case it were to fall off or something. So if you look in here, this is the fridge controls right here, okay? The green switch, let's just say green is good, red is bad, okay? If you have power, you don't want to turn them both on at the same time. Just follow the instructions. The green is if you have power coming from the cord. These knobs, the red switch, everything else, don't worry about it, okay? That's for using the propane or using the battery. Just think of red bad, green good. If you want to use the refrigerator and you have power, hit the green switch, it'll kick on. We're not plugged in, so I'm not going to hit the switch now, but it's pretty easy. People have used it. They've been renting it for, a week or 2 weeks at a time. They said it was really handy. It does take a little while to cool off, like any fridge would. I would expect at least, probably 3 or 4 hours, maybe more like 6 or 7 to where it gets nice and cold. Quite frankly, when we go camping, we take a cooler. And we maybe get a bag of ice a day if we need it, if stuff's not already staying cold. If you're going for a weekend, you may just be bringing a cooler anyway with lunch meat and Cokes and things like that, beers. It's sometimes easier just to leave it all in the cooler as opposed to the fridge. But it's yours if you want to use it, and this is how you do it. Plug it in, green switch, fridge kicks on. All right, let's talk about the water. If you have a clean water faucet at your campsite, a lot of state parks have them, you have the option of hooking up this clean water hose. Please don't expose this to dirty water. You have this clean water hose in that miscellaneous cabinet. You just unhook it. You want to connect it to this. This is the water intake, and then the other end will go to the faucet. And you just turn the faucet on at the campsite, and that'll send water up to this, which is then connected to one side of the sink. It's pretty easy. You also want to make sure that you have this bucket the blue bucket, it'll be inside. Underneath the drain out valve, it's right here. This doesn't need a hose connection as long as it's connected, as long as it's hitting the bucket. There is a law in Colorado that says something like you can't have wastewater going directly into the ground. I believe you can pour it on your fire, that's what I've been told, but you can't just have it going straight into the ground. All right, if there's not a faucet at your campsite, there will be a funnel like this, well, this one, in the miscellaneous cabinet. And what you'll do, and this is actually what we do most of the time, so this is probably the most common thing. It's got a little curved end, like this. It goes whichever you need to do like this. You'll stick it in. These jugs will be inside the camper as well. They're super handy. I would fill up maybe one or two. I mean, you probably won't use that much water, but fill up one of these, and you just kind of take off the, screw off the spout there, and just pour it into the funnel, and this goes into the water tank that's inside. We'll show you that in a second, but that's how you do it. You fill this up with water, come back, and just pour this right in. I want to say it holds up to like 10 gallons in there, but I would probably put maybe a handful of gallons because you just don't use that much water inside. It's not like there's a shower or anything. Okay. In order to do that, we'll go around. All right, we're back inside, and by the way, I didn't do this earlier, but it's really, really simple. We went ahead and set up the table. You just kind of put the cushions in place. The table is basically like an ironing board. It does rest on these when it's in the traveling position. We'll probably show that to you when we break it down, but it's just a little scissor thing. So we put this in place. The reason I did that is because for the water to be on, the water pump, and again, the battery's hooked up. We know that because we have this green light, remember? The battery's hooked up. This is the switch to actually turn on the water pump. And you can kind of hear it a little bit kick on. The way it works is that comes on. There's a little sign here on the sink that says left arrow city, right arrow tank. If we have water hookups at the campsite and we've hooked up that hose to that intake spout, then we can turn on the city water over here, and that's what it's basically like a faucet, like turning on the spigot out there. It'll come out. If we're on tank water, the water tank is under here, under the seat. If we're using that, battery's hooked up, water pump is on, we'll use this, and you'll hear it. There may be a little bit of residual water in there, it turns out, so that's interesting. But that's how it works. It's not going to sound, you know, perfectly smooth. It may go, oh, oh, oh. That's okay. One thing I want to mention is when you're not using the water pump, go ahead and flip this switch back off right here, just because I'm told it will actually drain the battery just slightly whenever it's on. Before you leave, let's talk about this water tank real quick. Before you leave, you'll want to dump out whatever remaining water that's still in the storage tank. Super easy to do. You just don't want to carry around, slosh around a bunch of water while you're traveling. So we always want to dump it out. And it's okay to dump out clean water onto the ground. So I'm going to take these cushions out. We're going to lift this little panel up. And there's the water tank right here. Again, I think it's about, I'm guessing about 10 gallons or so. Right here on this side, there's a spout, and you can hopefully see it through the GoPro camera on my head. There's a little spout, and I believe it's in the closed position now, but when you're ready to leave, you just open it up, and the water will drain out through the bottom of the camper perfectly fine. Just try to remember to do that so, again, the water doesn't slosh around or so. If for some reason the last person before you forgot to close it back up after the water's draining, well, you'll know it real quick when you start pouring water in through that funnel outside and you hear it hitting the ground, and maybe because this was left open accidentally, just come inside, close it up, and you won't have a problem. So that's the water tank. The rest of this apparatus in here, don't worry about. Actually, let me while we're talking about it real quick, we talked about plugging it in to external power if you have an outlet at your campsite. Once you do that, all the plugs, there's a handful scattered around here, even one on the outside, I believe, like the regular outlets, you know, will work fine. the outlets will not work off of battery power. Okay, the outlets, you know, they need a lot of power. The battery's not meant for them. So if you're plugged into external power, all the we've tested them, all the plugs here will work. But if you're not plugged into external power, don't even try to use the plugs. All right, let's talk about the stove real quick. It's still where it was earlier, and this is the line, the gas line that comes from the stove. And this is the gas line that will probably be already coming out, or at least sticking out just barely, out of what looks like a cup holder. So you want to make sure this is in the off position. We're going to just clip these together. You pull this down. It's kind of a very simple, kind of quick release. You know that's in place. Well, probably didn't do a very good job there. All right, so now it's solid. Pulling up, it's not going anywhere. What we want to do is you'll go out to the propane tank out there, make sure it's connected, and it's one of those connections where you got to make sure that the gray piece is screwed onto the tank enough to where you actually can hear usually a little click. They've made these propane valves kind of fancy now, so you got to twist it on all the way. You'll probably hear a click. Then you'll turn on obviously the knob to kind of get the gas flowing through the lines to the heater and to this. When you're ready, just flip this to on, and you might even hear the gas kind of coming through the line. This will prop up. I don't really like the design of this very well, but it is what it is. These things kind of rest on top of here. Just try not to move it because it will fall down. Pretty simple, just like a normal Coleman stove you've ever used. You just flip these knobs to high. You'll probably hear the gas coming out. Use your trigger lighter. There's some scattered around here. Flip it on, and you're ready to cook. I'm going to fold this back down, and we're going to talk about one other option for the stove if you want to use it outdoors, okay? Because this is not the only location where it can be used. Space is limited, so we cook breakfast a lot inside when it may be a little chilly outside, but a lot of times other meals it's cool to cook outside. So I'm going to unhook this. I'm going to take it to off. I'm going to let this go. Okay, so it's unhooked. This line right here, I'm going to actually pull through the cabinet right there. Let's just say if I were going to do it, I would pull it out and I would go through this cabinet door. There's actually a little hole to the outside. So we'll go to the outside. Let me show you kind of how it works. On the back of the stove, there's this kind of metal railing. Well, this railing slides right on to this right here. So you kind of start on this side, make sure it's clear, get a good connection there. Carefully, I don't think I have a good connection there. Let's do that again. All right, it should slide on pretty smoothly once you get it just right. It'll rest very nicely right there. And as you notice, if you come over here, this is the gas line from the stove. And remember we talked about putting it through this hole instead of coming up through the counter. You put it out the side like this, snap it together, make sure it's a secure connection, flip that switch, same principle, you're ready to go. Cooking outside is kind of cool when you just need a little bit more space, or if there's a line of people waiting for burgers or whatever, just got a little more room to work with. It's kind of nice sometimes, and it's not going to make the inside too smoky if you're cooking bacon or having a lot of smoke coming off of there. So that's the outside cooking option with the propane stove. All right, we're just about done. One more thing to talk about, and that's the heater. That's obviously an important one. That's part of the reason you may be renting a camper is because it's a good thing to have in Colorado. You just never know when you might get a chilly night, even in the late spring, summer, or early fall. It can get down to the 40s or so, and you don't want to have a rough night's sleep. So the heater's a good thing to have. In fact, it's so important we just replaced the thermostat just because it's something I don't want you to have to take any chances with. Okay, first thing you want to do is make sure that the roof vent, which by the way is up here, is closed so you don't lose any of the heat that's coming from the propane. Same thing with all the windows, just zip them up, seal them up, and the thing stays actually pretty well insulated. You want to make sure that the green light on this panel that we talked about earlier is on. Again, that monitors for carbon monoxide leaks, also propane leaks as well. And you want to make sure that the propane is hooked up and turned on. Again, if you didn't catch it earlier, you want to make sure that gray knob screws onto the propane tank far enough to where you can actually hear or feel a little click. That's kind of like a safety valve. So you hear that click, you know it's screwed on far enough, and you want to go ahead and open up the tank, because that propane runs the heater. You don't need to light the heater. You don't need to ever get out matches or a lighter for that. It takes care of that automatically, runs off the battery for that. So the way this works is the thermostat box, you find it's right here. It'll be all the way to the left, okay? You're going to slide the switch on the top to the right, and you're probably going to hear it kick on, at least the fan, immediately. So let's try it. It's actually a warm day today, so okay. So I just clicked it far enough to the right to where the fan kicks on, and you hear it running. It may take a second before the propane starts going through it and actually puts out hot air. So we'll stand by here for just a second just to kind of show you when it's getting hot. Again, the heater's down here, puts out a pretty good amount of airflow, so I can hear it running. I can feel it running right now. We'll just wait. And you may have just heard that click there. That was actually the heating coils, or whatever the heating component is inside of there, clicking on. Again, it may take a couple of minutes or so for it to heat up. I'll monitor it, and we'll fast forward here if we need to, as it kind of as it warms up. Okay, it's been about a minute or so, maybe a little bit less, and I can actually feel the air warming up. And if you're putting it on at night, just put it at a reasonable setting, and it'll kind of kick on and off as needed overnight. A lot of times what we do is, when it comes time to wake up in the morning, kind of click it on, and there may be a little bit of a kind of almost like a ceramic-y, almost like a sweet smell. It's probably just a little bit of dust, or the heating coils inside just kind of putting off a little bit of fumes. It's not carbon monoxide or whatever. Again, that thing's monitoring for that. I'm actually thinking about putting in a second carbon monoxide detector towards the top, just so you kind of have it on both ends. But again, this is warming up, and this will heat the thing up pretty quickly, and it's really nice to have heat on a cold night. The setting, just make sure you kind of find the sweet spot. It's hard to say. There is a thermostat here. When you're done here, when you're ready to turn it off, you'll click it all the way to the left towards off. It may still stay on for a little longer because it wants to keep the fan running to kind of cool it off. So when you don't break it down, it's still really, really hot on the edge. So it'll stay on for just probably a minute or two, maybe a few minutes, while it kind of gets all the propane and stuff out of the system and kind of cools itself off. But again, it's okay for it to still run after you turn this all the way to the left. But as long as this is all the way to the left, you're good, and it will eventually kick off. So just to recap, we've gone through the basic setup and all the key functions, the key appliances that you may want to use while you're out camping. Ask me before you take off about a backup heater. I feel better knowing that you have kind of a backup heater system. There will probably be a little buddy heater and some little propane tanks, and even attachment to the main propane tank in this other side here, this storage bin under this side of the sink or somewhere else. So just ask me about the backup heater. Again, it's not in here right now, but it probably will be by the time you leave. Heating is just a big deal. And there was one issue we had last year with somebody when the thermostat wasn't working quite right, and got a little chilly at night, and we gave them a partial refund. So that's why this year I'm going to make sure there is a backup heater. And part of the reason I was explaining that is to kind of stretch this out and give you enough time to hear that this actually just kicked off. So after apparently 2 or 3 minutes or so, the fan will kick off, and you're good to go. So that's the basic setup of the camper. Whenever you're ready to watch the breakdown part, just click on the next video, and we'll pick it up from there and more or less work backwards from what we just did.